Hey, let's go over some Spurs news and notes and then ask, could Wemby have been a better defender than Gobert in the Western Conference Finals?
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs, the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for KENS 5 San Antonio. Glad to have you all back. TGIF, everybody. Weekend is here. You made it through it. We thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen every single day. Free and available wherever you get podcasts. Go to iTunes, go to Spotify, go to YouTube, go to the KENS 5 Plus app. Just look up Locked On Spurs and subscribe. And, of course, all other platforms where you get your favorite podcasts. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code now. It's all lowercase, LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. What are we talking about today? We're going to be diving into some Spurs news and notes, then bringing our guest, Matt Guzman. Been on Locked On Spurs before. I met him during the regular season. Student, he's learning the whole, ins and outs of sports media. He's going to be coming on to enter the multiverse. We're going to enter a strand of the Spurs timeline here and see what it'll like if Wemby was playing in the Western Conference Finals versus the Dallas Mavericks. The whole Gobert thing. Yeah, we're going to be discussing that in just a few seconds and then get into your comments. What are y'all talking about over at the Locked On Spurs YouTube page? But first, some Spurs news and notes. And you know what? Those odds makers are already added. They're kind of projecting where Darius Garland, the Cavaliers point guard, could land next season if he does not stay in Cleveland. And guess what? They're projecting the Spurs as the number one spot for Garland to call home as soon as next season. Now, we're probably going to be discussing this at length in a future episode of Locked On. But just a heads up, it'll have to be a trade if the Spurs want to get him in uniform next season. And those odds, yeah, they got him at plus 300. The Spurs lead the pack by the Magic, Heat, and Pistons. The favorites to land Garland. He definitely checks the boxes, doesn't he? All-star, point guard, young, can shoot, can score, like nice running mate with Wemby, an upgrade at the point guard spot. He is a bigger guard than Trey Jones, but hey, you know what? We're going to have to dive into this in a future episode of Locked On Spurs. In other Spurs news, Karl-Anthony Towns, if you notice, if you had an eagle eye, he has been wearing Tim Duncan-inspired sneakers throughout the Western Conference playoffs. Now, they're not the same ones, but if y'all remember, back in 1998, Tim Duncan wore the Nike Total Air foam posits. Well, obviously they're been away for a long time. I think they had a reissue back in 2020. But the point is, Karl-Anthony Towns is wearing those inspired sneakers by Tim Duncan. Now, they're not exact match, but they're definitely in the same realm. Those y'all who remember, it was kind of a metallic silver on those Nikes. Well, that's not on Towns' shoes. But remember the bubble, that metallic bubble with the Nike logo on it? That's on there. It's still a mid. Still has the black. It has the vibe of it. But if you want to check out what those sneakers look like, you want to go to kens5.com/Spurs right now. By the way, if you want to get a pair of the old school Tim Duncan sneakers, the foam posit Max back in 1998, well, on the secondary market, they're going upwards as high as $3,000. Yeah, $3,000. So if you got the cash and you want to take part in that, go and spend that money over on the secondary market. But man, $3,000. I don't mind sneakers. I definitely can appreciate them, but my goodness, that's a little bit too much for me to fork over for a pair of sneakers. And finally, to give a hat tip to Trey Jones. Now, Trey Jones recently had an event where he wanted to raise breast cancer awareness, basically to San Antonio. And, for those who don't know, his mother is a survivor of breast cancer. So that's really impacted him a lot. So he had put together kind of an event, kind of just to raise awareness gathering. And it was part of the, if you're from San Antonio, you know what this is, the Susan G. Komen walk run event. So he showed up, and from what I am told, he is very, very passionate about this cause, obviously, because it hit him close to home. And he had a chance to speak during the event. Now, I'm going to play you a video from it. This is courtesy of the Spurs. So check out Tre Jones, and you just feel just how passionate he is about breast cancer and how happy and thrilled and how much his mother surviving it brought his family closer together. So here is Tre Jones.
Yeah, it's really important for me to be able to be at these events. One, for the community of San Antonio. Community is everything to me. And then also just the importance of, the cause that we're here for. It's for breast cancer, to continue to raise awareness for it, both research-wise and to be able to get just resources to help all the women that are going through the battle and the fight of breast cancer. And that's always important. Ever since we all got the news of it and she began her battle with breast cancer, we got even closer every single day. We were talking to each other more than ever. And for the first time in my life, it had just been health first for all of us. It was sports to the side, all events were put to the side, and it was just, the main thing was just about the health of one another. And so it definitely brought us all closer.
There you have it. That's Tre Jones. Again, that video is courtesy of the San Antonio Spurs. So, yeah, you saw it there. You can definitely see how much this means to him. So, kudos to Tre Jones. Just goes to show you the Spurs are very passionate about their off-the-court passions, and especially when it comes to raising awareness to causes like breast cancer or even helping the Uvalde County community that is still recover from the shooting they had a few years ago. The Spurs are always at the forefront when it comes to community service, and you just saw Tre Jones lead the charge when it comes to raising breast cancer awareness. So, yeah. So if you want to read more about that and more, you go to kensfi.com/Spurs right now. All right, there's your quick Spurs news and notes. When we get back, Matt Guzman, second-time guest here on Locked On Spurs. We're going to be entering the Spurs multiverse and kind of imagine, what would Wemby do if he was on the court against the Dallas Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals, and talk about you guys, the Locked On Spurs fans, and your comments you're leaving over at the YouTube page. First, I want to talk about PrizePicks. Hey, what is PrizePicks? Well, it's America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members. Easiest, most exciting way to get in all the action while you can and watch your favorite sports and players. Look, you just pick more than or less than 2 or more players and their stats, and you can start watching those winnings roll in. Right now, you can turn your money to 100 times more on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. So, for example, you could turn $10 into $1,000 with basketball, whatever, MLB, the list goes on and on. Entries today on PrizePicks. So go there, do that right now. It's America's #1 fantasy sports app. Also, hey, look, PrizePicks is very simple to use. You can make your picks, submit your entries in less than 60 seconds. You get quick withdrawals. You get Apple Pay. You get weekly promotions, special offers for the biggest moments in sports. They got it all. It's user-friendly, very intuitive. Get that app right now. Go sign up immediately. Hey, look, PrizePicks, what more can you say other than download that PrizePicks app right now? WNBA, that's all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app right now. Use the code lowercase Locked On NBA. You get that deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It is that easy.
A Jedi uses the Force. To subscribe to Locked On Spurs, pass on what you have learned.
And look who is back, everybody, after a long time away from Locked On Spurs. He is Matt Guzman. Make sure to follow him on X at MattGZman. Hey, Matt, tell the listeners, what do you do? I know you work with your school newspaper, covering sports and whatnot. So what are you up to?
Yeah, so this summer I'm going to have an internship with the Kansas City Star. So I'll go out and check out some new territory. I haven't ever been up that way, besides a few trips from Columbia. But on the side, or I guess, what I'm doing outside of that for Spurs, I'll be having a site manager role and the lead reporter for the Spurs on SI. It's kind of a new rebrand that Sports Illustrated is taking on over the next couple of weeks. And so I'll be there doing content year round during season and off season. So I'm excited to get going and I guess keep the content rolling. How are you?
Doing good, by the way, everybody. I met Matt during last season. He was sitting there with me as we chatted with the Spurs coach staff and whatnot. So, and he did show up during the regular season once, but he has school. He has things to do. So, well, he finally in the offseason, and now he got some time to rejoin us here at Locked On Spurs. And me, I'm doing fine. Same thing as you, trying to keep the Ken's 5 going, on their
Absolutely.
Spurs coverage. Locked On Spurs got to keep it going, at least for a little while longer, 5 days a week. That ain't easy. That's why I take these easy routes out when I say enter the multiverse, so we're about to do in a while. So that helps pass the time away. But other than that, I'm doing fine, Matt. But I'm glad to have you back. And in case you cannot read on your screen, everybody, we're going to be asking the question, Wemby better? Could he have been the better defender for, well, we'll just enter the multiverse. We haven't entered the Spurs multiverse in a long time. For those you're not aware of, we have fun with that. Everybody, I mean, you don't have to, no surprise. I'm a big nerd, everybody. I think all of freaking San Antonio knows that. And I like having this thing enter a different Spurs timeline. So I don't know if you have your PIN particles ready. Did you consult with the Hulk and Bruce Banner? Let them know you're about to go into the portal because we're about to
take
I'm
ready to go if you are. Yeah.
I made sure the TVA was not on us. So the TVA is not following us. We're good. They're not going to get mad at us for trying to mess with the another Spurs timeline here. But the timeline we're about to enter is what if? What if the Spurs were in the Western Conference and Wemby was playing defense against the Dallas Mavericks? This is stemming from Kendrick Perkins' recent, just annihilation of Rudy Gobert winning the Defensive Player of the Year. He went up and said he regretted it. He's tarnishing the award and just totally they bashed him. So a lot of Spurs fans heard that, Matt. You heard that. They're saying, yeah, well, you voted for Gobert. Now look what happened. So Spurs fans feel just a little vindicated.
For sure. And I think rightfully so. I mean, this entire season, they've been seeing clips or being in person of just watching defenders or I guess I should say other playmakers from other teams scared to go for layups on fast breaks just because they see Victor down there, and he's made highlight reels countless times with his blocks. He's even got one on Chet. He got one on Giannis. And so just his ability to defend, small and big guys, like he proved himself as a worthy defender. Mm-hmm. So it was a little puzzling, I know, for some to see Rudy Gobert take home his 4th Defensive Player of the Year trophy over Victor. I know that that's definitely a big thing that they were hoping that he would get. So it's I mean, they rightfully so. I mean, I understand it's kind of that outrage, especially because Rudy Gobert hasn't exactly looked the way he did all season long in the postseason, and obviously it's not a postseason award, but there's something to be said there, I think.
Absolutely. And now in this timeline, we entered it. We're in this alternate universe right now. We're seeing Wemby on the court versus Dallas. Right off the bat, my observation is, Wemby presents a different big. Obviously, sure, they may be almost similar in height, but they're not the same athletically. I mean, you see Gobert out there. He looks like his feet are in cement, just awkward, very immobile. Just not explosive. And the biggest thing that I'm seeing in this timeline right now in this Spurs multiverse, branch is Gobert. I don't see Dallas afraid to challenge him at the rim. If it was Wemby there, I think they might be second, third guessing themselves about even getting to the rim. I think right there, just that alone is the difference. I think why Wemby would be a better defender versus the Mavericks.
For sure. And I think it's an interesting case too, because when you look at the regular season, the Spurs play the Mavs, I think 4 times or so. They never beat them. There was never a matchup where the Spurs came out on top. Now, I know that the first one was Victor's very first game of the year, and he fouled out or just about fouled out, really got himself in trouble there. But I think that as he grew and as he learned his way around the NBA a little bit more, he became a lot more confident both on offense and on defense. And really the game I wanted to look into was actually the last one between both squads. And Dallas came away just 6 points ahead, 113-107. But this Victor Wembanyama with his squad that he had in San Antonio actually held Kyrie Irving to a -10. He made him very obsolete as far as impact goes, and perhaps that's why it was so close. Now, if we're entering our multiverse, right, we're putting Victor now on Timberwolves in place of Gobert. You look at the pieces that they have in Minnesota. You have Anthony Edwards, and already off the bat, that team is better than what the Spurs had last season.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so the pieces around him, plus not to mention Jaden McDaniels, one of the best perimeter defenders. You're not just talking about Victor on his own, but also just the way that he would fit into that defensive scheme. And it seems like he would be a huge asset for them. And so I'm inclined to think that he would. I mean, I think he'd fare pretty well.
Yeah. I think he would actually exceed Gobert right now. Because now, look, we got to talk about the big elephant in the room, and that's Luka. Look, I don't think anybody can slow this guy down. I think you just got to make him work. I think Victor, would challenge him if he attempts to go to the rim, but I also think he would make Luka think twice about taking deep shots, whether it be 3-shot, and he gets caught in a switch, because he has to respect Wemby's athleticism and his reach. He can close out that distance faster than Gobert. Gobert, he's like Frankenstein out there. It's just what it looks like, very like lumbering. Like,
I personally enjoy it. I don't know if you saw.
Yeah, Wemby is a lot more fluid. Yeah, exactly. He's a lot more fluid.
For sure.
And I know we're talking about the defensive impact that Wemby could have had in this, or is having in this multiverse timeline that we're entering right now. I think he alone is gonna just Wemby alone relieves the pressure defensively.
Absolutely.
For your perimeter. And can gamble more. He can gamble more. The other players can gamble more on defensively. They can, go for a steal. If they get burned, so be it. They get their ankles broken, so be it. You got a human eraser behind you. So I think it is clear. To me, it's clear that Wemby would be a bigger difference maker defensively. Now, we're talking about the DPOY as well. We can't ignore that. Gobert has it. But it was interesting. You were talking to me before he recorded. You said, you know what? I get why they gave him the DPOY. Why did you bring that up?
Yeah, so I did this big in-depth analysis because I was really curious as to what the race was going to look like. And obviously, you're dealing with two very different players, because Rudy Gobert's won it 3 times. And if he would win again, he'd be the 4th winner, or it'd be his 4th, and he'd be the oldest person to win it, the oldest player. Yeah. Now you have Victor over here, who's really shown exactly what he can be on defense, but he's still just a rookie. I mean, no rookie has ever contended for this award the way that Victor did. And so what I kind of figured out was that it boiled down to the wow factor, because when you looked at the advanced statistics, defensive win shares and defensive rating, Rudy Gobert had Victor beat, not by a lot, but he did. And so if it were any other player, not a 7'4" rookie that's, taking the league by storm, it seemed as if Rudy Gobert would be the clear favorite, and it wouldn't be so much as an argument. But just because of the sheer wow factor that Victor brought, because players were afraid to try him at the rim and they would steer off course on a fast break, or just the blocks that he could get, the fact that he could reach 3-pointers, from feet away before they even went up. There was a whole slew of clips, and it almost seemed like they were going to go with the numbers, or they were going to go with the semantics. What would happen? What would the feeling and the mood be if they gave it to this rookie and they aided his quest on being the best rookie to ever play the game, And so I personally saw the reasoning for Gobert, because, Victor was by far the most impressive defender, but by the advanced statistics, and maybe part of that is, like we said, there's such a young team. You're not really sure how much of it can be boiled down to that, but Rudy Gobert definitely held his own during the regular season.
Yeah. To me, it was clear that Wemby should have won it, because if we're doing individual awards, we look at the individual players and look at the individual stats, and with individual defensive stats, it was just staggering. It was like, Matt, I think years from now, 20 years from now, people are going to look back at this last season and be like, huh? What were they thinking? How did you do that? Why'd you give it to this guy? But this 20-year-old kid, clearly beat him statistically. But at the same time, I think what hurt Wemby was you brought it up. Yeah, the age, the rookie thing. Yes, that's some reason you can't give it to a rookie. But
that's
anyway,
weird. I agree.
That's very weird. Yeah. And then the other thing too, I think if he was so impactful defensively, why were there more wins? So I think that was a big reason, one of the reasons why Victor lost it ultimately. Now we're in multiverse right now. We're seeing Wemby playing against Dallas right now. I think Dallas's bigs would have issues. Gafford, Lively,
Right.
who else is on that squad? They're bigs out there. I mean,
Maxi
Kleber's
Kleber.
back. So yeah, Kleber's back. Yeah, I think those three guys. Well, we're still talking about Kleber yet because he's just barely back. But as far as Lively and Gafford, I don't think they have the games that they're having right now on the defensive end as they are having against Minnesota. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. And I think, it was such a shock when Rudy Gobert hit that fadeaway hook over
Yes.
Jokic to get
Yeah.
where they are right now.
I remember that.
He's
Yeah.
not an offensive weapon. And so, you can almost get away with letting him have the ball in the post and live with the shots that he's going to make if it means that you can go put more attention to Anthony Edwards or Mike Conley, who's been having a great postseason run. And so I think if you put Victor in that spot, you cannot do that. Because not only are you have Ant Edwards running around dunking all over people, but you have Victor as a lob threat, a three-point threat, and a post defender who can sham God his way to the rim if he needs to.
Yeah.
And so I think that I think you're right. I don't think that Dallas's bigs match up quite as well. And I think it all boils down to just the pieces that have that he'd be surrounded with. Because you put the Spurs team against the Mavs and it's going to lose. But put Wemby on the Timberwolves and all of a sudden it's a completely different squad. And I'd even go as far as to say if Victor was on the Timberwolves all season long, he would have won Defensive Player of the Year as a rookie.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sure. And which is a shame because it's an individual award. In my opinion, wins don't factor in. Yeah, wins don't factor. You're just looking at defensive numbers, and defensively, Wemby got it. And the other thing too, the other big one was just how dramatic the defensive numbers dropped on the on-off stats. I mean, it was just.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a whole other topic, right? Just the amount of things that he was able to do while dealing with a minutes restriction for half of the season was impressive. And gives you every reason to believe that he's going to continue to be great.
Yeah. And you think about too, if we're looking at the defensive impact, if Wemby, was playing against the Mavericks right now in this alternate timeline we're jumping into, I think you can pencil in him 10 plus rebounds for 4 or 5 blocks. You can't do that with Gobert. You can't. You don't know what you're getting, and you've been seeing it as the series has gone on and whatnot. Is there's rumblings out there that maybe he's a liability defensively, which is odd to say that to the Defensive Player of the Year. Matt, your thoughts?
Right. I mean, and you're never supposed to look back on the regular season and then be like, well, he's you can't justify an MVP winning or not winning based on his postseason performance, because they award it right before the postseason goes on, or they're supposed to, at least. But I mean, never do you ever hear your best defender or the best defender in the entire league be questioned whether or not he should be on the court. Like whether or not the Timberwolves are better off without him. That is not that's not a good place to be. And I don't know what it is about Gobert and the shift to the postseason, but he's looked different. I don't think he's been terrible, but I definitely think that from what we've seen from Victor this season, it didn't seem like it mattered whether it was the first game of the season, whether it was the last game of the season. He treated it all the same. He wanted to be out there. He even subbed himself in when he was on that minutes restriction in one game. Yeah. I think he'd be willing to do whatever it takes to win. I don't think he's easily rattled. And so I have every reason to believe that he would continue that strong defensive performance into the postseason.
What I don't like about this that was in this timeline right now is seeing Victor in a Minnesota uniform. That's I don't like right now as we're entering the multiverse right now.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
But it's a little weird, yeah. But no, I think Wemby would just be a better defender in this series versus Dallas. Now, by the time this showing is up, maybe Dallas already advanced to the finals, or they're still fighting for their lives, at least fighting for a chance to get in. But either way, even if Dallas is advanced or they're still fighting against Minnesota, if you just look at the start of the series to however it ends, clearly Wemby makes an impact defensively, a bigger impact than Gobert. Ultimately, look, I think Wemby nailed it on the head last season when he said, "Hey, Gobert, enjoy this one." I think that's what I think. You fast forward to next season, if he duplicates even what he did his rookie season, he's gonna get it.
I agree.
There's gonna be a look. He just finished year one. Everybody, There's a lot of years in there. I got to get out of this timeline, Matt, because I can't stand seeing Timberwolves Wemby right now.
You're done with
I don't
Victor
like that.
in Minnesota?
So, yeah, I'm going to contact Nick Fury and Bruce Banner and Ant-Man to get us out of this this multiverse here. We hit our PIM particles and get out of that. All right, we're out of the multiverse now. We're back to reality. All right, well, what do you think? Do you think Wemby would have made a bigger defensive impact than Gobert has in the series versus Dallas? You can let Matt know on X at MattGZMan, and you can let me know by simply going to Locked On Spurs, subscribing to Locked On Spurs right now. When we get back, we're going to be discussing you guys. What are y'all talking about over at the Locked On Spurs YouTube page?
Oh, hey, this is Morty Smith and Cheese. You are listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia on Cheese.
And we are out of the Spurs multiverse, and we're back right here on Locked On Spurs with Matt Guzman. Make sure to follow him on X at MattGZMAN. Met him during the regular season last year. And after a while, Matt, I think I even told you this sometime. I feel like I don't know what to ask anymore because I feel like I'm just asking the same thing over and over again. Hopefully that'll be different next year in the post-game locker room conference calls and whatnot. But again, make sure everybody follow him on X at MattGZMAN. There you go. All right, so it is time, everybody. We're trying to make this segment about you guys. You guys are leaving a lot of comments at the Locked On Spurs YouTube page. Matt and I, we don't have enough time to get them all in. We're just going to pick two. So let's go ahead and dive into it right now. The first comment, Matt, is from Nick Matson. He says, quote, even if he, Wembanyama, is the best player next year, he still wouldn't win the MVP vote. What do you think about that? Let's just say Wemby just improves astronomically, even more so than he did last year. And he is the best player in the league. And I think Nick is talking about what Dame Lillard had to say recently about Wemby being the best player in year 2 for him. You don't think he would win the MVP?
I don't think so, actually. I think I would agree with that one. And I think it's just because the nature of that award is so heavily biased toward how well your team is doing. And I looked into the Defensive Player of the Year, which we were just talking about, and all of the winners had made the playoffs when they won the respective award, let alone the MVP award. Sure. And so, I mean, the Spurs, it seems like they're going to be taking this very patient, slow approach to building around Victor, whether they're going to use those 2 draft picks they've got in the lottery this year or get them for somebody else. But either way, it's going to be a very patient and slow building approach. Victor will continue to get better, and the Spurs will continue to get better. I guess if we were to say that, Victor goes on to be the best player in the NBA next year, I don't know just how many more games the Spurs would win. It could be like a resurgence the way that the Spurs had whenever Tim Duncan and David Robinson came in. I mean, they had 30 more wins. So, if you call this season that season right before, maybe if the Spurs go on to get 50 wins and make the playoffs, then he'd definitely have a case because he'd be leading that team as the best player in the league. So he definitely have a case, but I'm not so sure. I don't know if he'd be able to just because of where the Spurs are right now. I think they're still a few years away from really being contenders.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I also agree with the commenter over there at Locked On Spurs. I don't see it unless for me, it'll have to be a solid 1 through 6 playoff spot. Guaranteed 1 through 6. For him to get an MVP consideration.
Right.
And the makeup of the roster, wins. There's nowhere else to go but up after last season, 22 wins. Right. I get that. But even if they get 30 wins, that ain't still enough. I mean, look what Wemby did last year on his own, and it still didn't translate to team wins. That's what it comes down to Brian Wright, coaching staff, scouts, to build that team around him ASAP. Go ahead.
If you look over at Oklahoma City this year, right, like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander finished 3rd in MVP voting this season, and he was the best player on the number 1 seeded Thunder, and not even he did enough supposedly to get the MVP. Now, a lot of people were kind of up in arms about that one, thinking that maybe he had deserved it, but I just if not even Shai Gilgeous-Alexander can get it in this year after a year that Jokic has already won, multiple times, so it's like that voter fatigue is a little bit there. I just don't see it.
All right. Well, there you have it. Thank you for that comment, Nick, and we appreciate it. All right, the next comment is from Renee. Now, they're reacting to the recent video about Popovich saying, go Mavs, go Mark Cuban, go kick some bleep, all that stuff. He says, quote, or he or she, excuse me, I don't know what Renee says. He's entitled to his opinion. So are we? We'll boo Kawhi if we want to. We'll boo the Mavs if we want. Nothing to see here. Thank you for that comment, Renee. What do you think of that? Do you think Papa's right to be cheering on Dallas Mavericks? You know, the rival, maybe not as big as a rival against Houston, but nevertheless a rival, a team that's been kicking the Spurs' butt over the last few years. But there was Popovich. Now, interesting though, Matt, a lot of Spurs fans, I would say a majority of Spurs fans are okay cheering for Dallas. But what do you think about Renee, what they had to say? Look, Pop, you do you, we'll do us.
Yeah, I remember that was a big. I think it caused a lot of controversy whenever he went up to the microphone at Frost Bank to tell him to stop booing Kawhi, And I think that just kind of shows that, like, obviously, like, it was very clear from the get-go that anytime Kawhi was going to touch the ball, he was going to get booed, and the Spurs fans had their minds made up that he was public enemy number one that day. And so I think that there's definitely a different mindset between the Spurs fan base and Greg Popovich. And I think a lot of that has to do with he's been there and done that. I mean, he's already won 5 NBA titles. He's not sitting around like I personally don't think he's sitting around really upset that the Mavs have beaten him 4 times last season. I think he's perfectly fine. And so I think it kind of goes a little bit deeper than just the recent rivalry. And he's more just like, well, maybe he's just good friends with Mark Cuban, like that. I think it could boil down to that. But I am curious as to your thoughts about, the Spurs and their right to boo whoever they want to boo.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I'll stop you right there. Yes. Yes. Spurs fans should boo whoever they want to boo. If they want to boo Kawhi, go for it. If they want to boo Cuban, go for it. If they want to boo Boban, crazy as it sounds, that is their right. They can boo Boban if they want to. They're the paying customer. That's part of the game. That is part of sports. I was there at the Frost when that incident happened. When Pop took the mic, I thought it was candid camera. I thought it was punked. I thought, well, what's going on? Is this like a joke? What's going on?
Yeah.
I was stunned. But no, I did disagree with Pop. I don't think he should have ever done that. And but he did. It's in the past. You got to move on. Interesting enough, though, he said that he doesn't regret doing that. So
right.
Maybe he might do it again because, Spurs fans are going to circle that game versus the Clippers. And if Kawhi is playing, that's a big if, he is in his history with injuries. Right. Yeah, I think Spurs fans are going to remember what Pop did. I think Pop just threw gasoline on the fire. I think he just did. You should just leave it alone. Don't do anything. Just let fans be fans. Move on. Nobody was throwing stuff from the court. Nobody was shouting expletives, at least from my media seat. Nobody was cussing him out. Nobody was going below the belt. Family,
yeah, right.
It was just straight booing. So, yeah, I think that it should be okay. Now, Matt, I got to ask you before you leave, are you cheering for the Mavericks, though?
I personally was cheering for the Timberwolves. I really liked Ant's very confident, braggadocious attitude. I heard that word today. Yeah. Something about it. It's just he's a cool guy. He knows that he knows he's good, and obviously he's had a few struggles.
He has cool sneakers too. I don't know if you've ever seen the sneakers. They're pretty cool. Very nice.
He's a cool guy. Like I very much enjoyed watching him this postseason. So I kind of hopped on the Timberwolves bandwagon this postseason, especially after they beat the Nuggets, because watching LeBron go down to the Nuggets 4 years in a row or 3 years in a row is just not.
That, didn't you?
Not a good sight. You get tired of the Nuggets after a while. So to watch Minnesota kind of pull through was cool. But I have nothing against the Mavs. So if they go on to do it, then good for them.
More Spurs fans coming out saying it's okay to cheer for Dallas. It's okay now. Like I said, the majority, and it was an overwhelming majority of Spurs fans said, yes, it's okay to cheer for Dallas. It is a rival, but it's a kind of respectable rivalry. But they brought up if it's Houston, then it's all the gloves are off. When the gloves are off, then you'd be banished. Your Spurs card would be revoked if you even cheered for the red and white in Houston. But yeah, it is. I'm pulling for Boston. I want Boston to win it. I used to live in New York City for nearly 2 decades, and I would go to Boston quite often because I have a good friend of mine out there. Actually, he's the host of Locked On Celtics. So I would visit him a lot. got learned. I mean, he was my roommate for about a year.
So
So
you lived in New York City and didn't root for the Knicks, but went for the Celtics.
Oh no, I was rooting for the Knicks. I was rooting for the
Okay.
Knicks. Well, but now that they're bounced, I'm going for Boston.
Okay,
now.
good to know. Good to know.
Yeah.
I was
the Knicks
like,
was
wow.
my team. Yeah. Yeah. And then, but no, I'm going for Boston. I hope they win it. Just to see my friend have some. I want to see my friend enjoy it. I want to see him, get to experience that, because I still have video of myself going into the Spurs locker room after they won 2014, and I got a very inebriated Corey Joseph on me, and Marco Bellinelli looking at my camera and everything.
Yeah.
So I would look at that video every once in a while. I'm like, oh, and I still pinch myself like, I got to go into the Spurs championship locker room and cover a team winning the title. So I want my friend the host of Locked On Spurs to experience what I got to experience in 2014.
Right.
Plus, I'm competitive. I don't want anybody from the West winning it unless it's Spurs. So that's another reason why.
That's valid.
I'm not okay cheering for Dallas. I think no. I want this team to have some dog in them, Matt. I want them like no.
I'd like to see them beat Dallas at least once next year.
Yeah. It's been a while since for this season. Dallas. Yeah. He is Matt Guzman. Make sure to follow him on X at MattGZMAN. Tell us what's going on in your world, man.
Well, I'm working on a couple of pieces about Victor's overall year. And with the Spurs going to Paris next I guess January for a couple of games, I got to talk with some cool people at the NBA about that experience. And so hoping to kind of tell some of those stories in the next couple of days, but that's what's going on over with me. So I appreciate you. Thank you for having me on. It's always a great time.
No problem. And again, if you want to read those pieces, make sure to follow Matt on X right there, Matt GZMAN. Make sure to do that right now. Hey, we'll be back next week. More Spurs talk as the offseason continues. Jack Thompson will be back. We're going to be diving into some Spurs NBA draft prospects and then so much more. So look forward to that on Monday. He'll kick us off the week here at Locked On Spurs. And we thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen every single day. Free and available wherever you get podcasts. Ken's 5 Plus app, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify. Pick a platform. We are there. Check out Locked On Sports Today, 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. Again, 24/7 streaming sports. You can't beat that. Only on YouTube. So for Matt Guzman, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.